Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. For those that don't know me, my name is Morgan. I'm the founder of Bevel's Advocate. We're a nonprofit organization that works to empower, educate, and assist families of children with disabilities by helping them navigate the special education system. Today, thanks to Utah Autism Mama Meetups, we're going to dive into an important topic, which is identifying those red flags in IEPs, what to watch for, and how to respond. I'm hoping by the end that you'll have tools to kind of recognize when something isn't quite right and also give you practical strategies to advocate effectively. So what we'll cover today, we'll kind of briefly go over the general idea of what an IEP is, those common red flags in teen dynamics, effective responses, some insider tips, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So I'm sure you all are aware, but an IEP is not just a plan, it is a legally binding document. So that means if something is written in the IEP, the school must provide it. So the IEP is built by a team, which includes you as the parent. And remember, the IEP is about ensuring your child receives FAPE, or a free, appropriate public education. Red flag number one is going to be vague goals. So if the goal doesn't tell you who, what, how often, and how progress will be measured, it's not a measurable goal, obviously. So always ask, how will progress be tracked and reported to me? This protects your child from generic goals that don't lead anywhere. So instead of student will improve reading skills, a more effective goal would say by May 2026, student will read 110 words per minute with 90% accuracy as measured weekly. So that tells us who, what, how often, and how we are measuring that progress, that success. Same thing here, we're getting a little closer, but it says student will improve math problem skills or math problem solving skills with 80% accuracy. A better way of saying this would be by March 2026, right? So we need to have a deadline of when we're trying to achieve this by. Student will solve two-step word problems, right? There are a lot of math problem solving skills. What are we trying to attain? And specifically involving addition and subtraction, keeping that 80% accuracy, but for 3 consecutive teacher-made assessments, right? So it's just giving us as much information as possible so that no matter who is doing the grading or looking into this, they're able to say yes or no, this goal was achieved. So another one, student will write a paragraph with correct grammar and punctuation in 4 out of 5 opportunities. Again, we're not saying when that's done by. So we need to say by June 2026 or whatever the deadline is. And we need to identify kind of what a paragraph is, right? Is that 3 sentences? Is that 5 sentences? So I know the examples on the are just longer, but they really do provide more information, and it'll just help keep your kiddos on track so that we are making progress in these IEP goals. The second red flag we have are goals without services or services without details, so missing services overall. One of the biggest red flags is when there's a disconnect between goals and services. So if the IEP says your child will meet a specific goal, there has to be a service written into it to actually teach that skill. So for example, if the goal is reading, there should be a reading service. If the goal is social skills, there should be direct social skills instruction, intervention. Same thing with behavior. If they're working on behavior, there should be some behavior support services being implemented as well. Without that match, the IEP is like making a promise without having a plan, right? So we want to make sure that we're able to achieve these goals. So there needs to be these services in place in order to get there. So a little test, we've got the goal is by May 2026, student will independently write a 5-sentence paragraph with a topic sentence, 3 details, and a conclusion in 4 out of 5 opportunities. Their services are speech therapy, OT consultation, preferential seating, behavioral support check-ins. Do we think this is a good match, bad match? If you're comfortable unmuting, you can unmute and say, or you can just give a little thumb up or thumb down in the reaction. What do we think here? Okay, no worries. This is not a good match. So we are working on the writing skills. There was speech, but there was no writing support to help this student get there. Another example, by February 2026, the student will independently record assignments in planner and place homework in the folder at the end of the day in 4 out of 5 days. So we've got, again, speech therapy, OT, access to fidgets, preferential seating, and counseling. For this one, we're looking on that independence, executive functioning skills. And this one is actually not a good match either because there's no services to teach this student how to attain the goal. I think this is the last testing one, but by December 2025, the student will initiate a peer interaction at least 2 times per recess in 4 out of 5 opportunities. So this student has small group counseling, social group, and behavior specialist consult. So this one would be a good match because they're actively working on these social skills and being taught how to achieve their goal. The third red flag we have are data gaps. So this red flag is kind of in the realm of vague progress reporting. So if a report only says making progress, that's not enough. You should see a baseline, so where your child started, the same metric used in the goal, the probe schedule, so weekly, monthly, quarterly, and a reporting schedule that matches the IEP. And just to note, you can always request the raw data and work samples. So that lets you see the growth and not just hear a summary, especially if you're unsure about things. It's always good to refer back to the data because data doesn't lie, right? So then one of the easiest ways to check if a goal is written well is to give it what I like to call the parent test. So you're going to ask yourself, can I tell exactly how we'll know this goal is met? If it's so vague you can't answer that, like if there's no deadline or like we did a few slides back, like whether they're writing a paragraph. What's a paragraph, right? So if you can't tell, that's a red flag. Another thing you can ask is, can I see the last 6 data points on a graph? So if the school can't show you actual data that way, then there's probably a gap in how the progress is being tracked, right? We want to see that consistency. We want to see that pattern, that trend. And so about 6 data points of history is great to have when making these kinds of decisions. So this isn't about catching the school doing something wrong. It's about making sure your child's progress is visible and measurable, right? I always want to make sure we're going into these meetings with the idea of collaboration. It's a team, right? But I'm completely aware and understand that sometimes it doesn't always feel that way. So if we just kind of stay objective and refer back to the data as much as possible, then I think we can all work better together. So then here are some questions that you can ask directly in the IEP meeting to kind of cut through that confusion. You can ask, what's the baseline for this goal? That gives you the starting line. You can ask, how often do you probe and who collects that data? So that shows whether there's a system and not just guesswork, because that's providing more information for you. And then lastly, can you graph the last 6 data points for us? That's what we were just talking about. That lets you see the trend. Are we going up, flat, slipping backwards? Is there that regression? And I'm a visual person, so seeing that graph sometimes helps a lot more. But these simple questions kind of force the team to ground the discussion in data instead of getting caught up in the emotion or opinions of the meeting as well. Number 4, placement without justification. So placement must follow your child's needs, not staffing or schedules or funding, anything like that. The team should show the data they used, supports they tried in general education settings, a harm benefit analysis, and also how many minutes in gen ed your child will have. If you hear we always or never place kids like this in this setting or with this resource, if they're kind of looping it all in as like an always or never, that's a red flag. I often hear things like, we don't have co-teach at this grade, so resource is the option, or we don't offer that here. They're basing this decision off program convenience, not individualized need, which you are protected by the IDEA and the IEP itself. So this is super important to know going in, that those are reasons that they should never deny or influence placement. Number 5, boilerplate goals. So if goals look the same year after year, they're most likely not individualized, right? So a strong goal starts from the present levels and the baseline. It targets a specific skill, it names the tool, and it defines mastery and timeline. So if any of those pieces are missing, we need to ask the team to rebuild the goal from your child's data. So this is what I kind of have out here is like the personalized checklist, like how is this for my kid, right? It's not just some copy and paste thing that you're taking for all reading comprehension goals, right? It's just going to be as individualized as possible. Number 6, we've got over-reliance on accommodations. So they are essential. Accommodations are great, but they don't teach skills. So if the IEP is heavy on accommodations, but light on the specialized instruction, progress will most likely stall, right? Accommodations support access, but instruction changes and develops the skills. You want to look for both. So accessing the supports and direct teaching aligned to the goals is where we see amazing growth. So red flags also show up in the process, not just in the paperwork. So we're going to identify some that may appear in the team dynamics. If you feel rushed, if decisions are made before you arrive, or your requests are dismissed, first of all, document it. Document. Ask for prior written notice when something is refused or changed. And what this is just having them put in writing that they're refusing, and it makes them provide the reasoning for the refusal. I also recommend after the meeting sending a summary email while the details are still fresh in your mind. But some phrases you can use in the meeting if you're faced with any of these are things like, For the record, was that a refusal? So, like, just so we're all on the same page, was that a refusal? If so, please provide prior written notice describing the evaluation, the placement change, whatever it is, the reasons, and the data that was considered when making this decision. Or you can also say, like, if something was said that you're not comfortable with, or that you feel wasn't in the best interest of your kiddo, we can say, like, hang on, let's pause. I'd like this discussion captured in meeting notes. So you can have them take notes. If I come to meetings with you, I always take notes. But the documentation is super, super important, so that we're leaving a paper trail. And most of the time with prior written notices, schools don't like to put their answers or their refusals on paper because maybe it is something they're supposed to be providing and they just didn't want to do the paperwork. So sometimes asking for that official document pushes things along. And I know I'm going really fast, so if you guys have any questions at any time, feel free to stop me. You can raise your hand, you can put it in the chat. I will have time for questions at the end, but I know this is a lot of information, so feel free to stop me. Okay, now the good stuff. We all are aware of the problems, right? We want to know how to respond effectively. So this is what I like to call the parent playbook. So we're going to use this 3-phase playbook. We've got before the meeting, during the meeting, and after. Before, I would list 2 to 3 must-fix items with proposed language. So whether it's the minutes, the provider, the setting, anything like that, be super specific. And then bring work samples or your own observations. Sometimes I've seen parents bring in outside therapists or doctor's notes or things like that. Anything that can help back up your claim, it's great to gather before the meeting so that you're prepared. And then also you're always welcome to invite support, whether that's an official advocate, or just your neighbor or a friend, a spouse, sister, whatever it is. You can bring anyone that knows about your child and the experience they're having at school. So even just that emotional support, I always believe it's better to have someone there with you, just because it's intimidating sometimes walking into those meetings. And so regardless of who it is, I would suggest that one myself. But during the meeting, always ask what data supports that, how will it be measured? So you're asking data first questions, always bringing things back to the data like we discussed, and then pinning down the metric, the frequency, and the provider. So giving those extra details to make sure we have a set plan and that we're not just making promises or throwing out ideas, right? Like, we want to make sure, let's get this all down on paper that we all agree. And then again, that prior written notice, ask for that if something is refused or delayed even. You can request this so that they're kind of gently guided to provide their reasonings why in an official, on an official basis. And then finally, after the meeting, you're going to send a summary email. So with the decisions, the next steps, you can just say, this is my understanding of what was discussed in the meeting. Again, just to have everything written down. It gets super tricky with those verbal conversations, and it's always good to just write all your thoughts out. Even if it's a little messy, get it down on paper. Another thing is to request those service logs, the raw data, and always have a follow-up date to review the progress. So this isn't always necessary, but if you're in kind of a rocky patch, it's better to say, okay, if we're going to try something, if it's not fixed by 2 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever the timing is, you want to have an end date in mind so that if you don't see any progress, you're able to kind of say, okay, we've given that time, we've given that a try, let's reconvene and figure out the next best path forward. Now, finally, here are some insider tips that I've noticed a lot of parents may not know. Number one, you can bring that support person that we were just talking about. So it definitely changes the dynamic. And even if they just help you take notes, it takes that pressure off of you. You're able to be more present. And I'm not here to force devil's advocate on anyone, but we are a service that can provide that for you. But again, it can be your neighbor, it can be your sister, it can be your cousin twice removed. It can be anyone that you feel comfortable with. But I would just bring someone to be there with you. And then you may be able to record with notice. And I'll get into this a little bit on the next slide. So if you're able to, you can record meetings. And then if something is not working, you can amend the IEP at any time. So you can call an IEP meeting whenever you want. You don't have to wait for that annual renewal date. If something's not working 2 months in, you can say, whoa, okay, and call a meeting and get everyone together to make a plan. And you are a member of that IEP team. So with that power, you can call meetings whenever. And then, like I said, asking for those service logs and the actual service schedule. So that's how you confirm the delivery of the services. So if they're saying, oh, you're getting reading intervention 30 minutes per week, but you're not completely sure that's happening, or you're just more curious into the process, you can request those logs and schedule, and they by law need to provide it to you, and then you're able to see whether or not those were being provided and by who and in what capacity, if it was group or individual based, right? Sometimes they can get a little sneaky with that. So it's always good to see exactly what's being reported. And I did want to touch on the recording consent laws because they vary by state. So here's a map outlining those differences. Utah, for example, I believe most people are from Utah, but they are a one-party consent state. So as long as you are actively participating in the conversation, such as an IEP meeting, you can record without letting anyone else know you're recording. So you can go in and record every single IEP meeting because you are present and participating in that meeting. So you don't need to feel weird about or confrontational about letting them know. You have the right, and it's legal for you to do so without even letting them know. And of course, if you're in a different state, that map kind of outlines it. But so as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with 3 simple takeaways that can guide you in any IEP meeting. So first, trust the data, not the words. So we talked a lot about data today, but when you see vague phrasing like making progress, that's not enough, right? So always look for measurable goals and ask to see the actual data behind them. Numbers, graphs, work samples, right? That's where the real story is. So always fall back on that. And then second, every goal needs a service. So a goal without instruction is just a promise on paper, right? If your child has reading, math, or behavioral goal, there should be specific service written in to teach that skill. No service, there's no growth. And third, your voice has power. So you are not a guest at the IEP table. You are an equal member. You can ask questions, request clarification, and you can amend the IEP at any time, like I said. don't underestimate the difference your advocacy makes for your child. You're not a burden. You're not annoying, right? This is your child and you know them best. And you're an equal member of that team. So speak up as much as you can. And if you remember nothing else from today, remember these three. Trust the data, insist on services, and use your voice. So that combination is what I feel turns an IEP from just paperwork into a real plan for progress. Okay. Whew, we went through that so fast. I'll go ahead and take questions now. I will say if your question includes names or private details, please refrain from asking it today as this meeting is being recorded, and we can connect for a consultation at a later date. I have this QR code that'll take you directly to scheduling a time to meet with me, and so we can figure it out more on a one-on-one basis. But if you have any general questions, I know some of you sent some in beforehand, so thank you for doing that. I'll start with just one of those while everyone thinks about what they'd like to have answered live, if anything. And when we do, then you can again unmute, you can put it in the chat, however you feel comfortable. I'll open it up after that. So one of the questions that was submitted ahead of time says, how do you ask for more support than your child is getting? For example, my son graduated from OT, but still very much needs help with his writing. This is a super common situation. Services like OT often get discontinued once a child meets the therapist criteria, but that doesn't mean that your child no longer has the needs, right? I think that's what you're referring to. The key is if your child still struggles with writing, and that's an academic skill, the school is required to address it through specialized instruction, even if OT has ended. So the best way to ask for more support is to point to current data. Again, we love data here. For example, you've got those writing samples, teacher feedback, scores, even your observations can count. Anything that shows how your child is still below grade level. And then you frame your request around the need. So given this data, what service will directly teach my child writing skills, right? So you don't have to name the service. That's not your job to figure out all the solutions. Your role is to describe the need and to ask, how will this be addressed in the IEP? That shifts the responsibility back to the team, and you can work collaboratively and give input, but it's not your job to figure it all out. So I hope that answered your question. And if anyone has a question they'd like answered live, I'll open up the floor. And if not, I can continue on with some that were sent in ahead of time. But I'll give a few seconds for anyone that wants to throw a question out there.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So you said that Utah is a one-party state, so we are able to record the meeting. Is there, just logistically, is there like a best way to do that? Is there like an app, or is there, how would you suggest to record it?
Good question. So I guess it depends. That's a great question. So typically I would say parents just kind of, if you have an iPhone, just use the voice memos
okay.
or whatever. But there are apps out there that will, transcribe and maybe give recaps, especially with AI now. And I'm trying to think of even one, like the one today is from Calendly. So it's just one of those note takers, but I would suggest any like AI note taker that will transcribe. I can look and send some out in our follow up as well. And
Okay.
but yeah, that's a great question. I would definitely, especially to take the load off you guys. There's so much you've got to deal with. I would do as little as possible. So if something's going to take the notes and give you a follow up, I would love for that to happen. So that is a great question. I'll look into that.
Okay, perfect.
Hey Casey, on one of the meetings that I wanted to have recorded, the school did say we need to have prior notice that you want it recorded. So I would just let them know that you want it recorded too.
Was that a virtual call or in person?
It was in person, yeah.
You don't need prior notice. I think respect wise, they would appreciate it, right? But by law, Utah's a one consent. So if you're participating in it, you do not need to let them know. And that's
good to know.
Yeah, that's a little concerning that they're so worried about it. But yeah, you can definitely. I would if you're in a position where it's just like for notes or just for documentation, I would just say, hey, I'm recording, just so you're aware, just so I have the notes for later. If it's more of a recording in a sense that like emotions have gotten high, things are being said, and you're worried about escalating it, then I mean, you don't have to, and you can catch them in the act, so to speak. Do you have the statute that says that for reference? I can send that out as well.
I have another question.
I have a question.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. Lori, you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I just have a question about charters versus like a school in your district. I'm guessing they're held to the same standards, right? They're both receiving the same kind of types, like of funding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are there any reasons why a charter would have more reasons to, I guess, say no to certain accommodations, or can we hold them to the same standard? Yeah.
So under the umbrella, they're all under the IDEA law, which is the law that puts out the rights for IEPs and disabilities and things like that you can't discriminate against and things like that. So under that, they are all governed by that. Private schools, they do have a little more wiggle room as far as specific policies, but ultimately they're all held to the same standard. Like you can't kick someone out for having an IEP, or you can't. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but things like that where ultimately, yes, the IDEA, like you have one of those 13 qualifying categories, you're qualified for an IEP. IEP needs to be implemented. So as far as that's concerned, yes, they're held to the same standard. There are a few like very granular differences. And again, if that's a personal situation that you want to get into specifics, then I'd be happy to talk that over with you more.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
In general, if there are behavior goals, like you were saying, goals need to be, there needs to be services attached to those goals. So who would provide services for direct instruction that's going to help with behavior, and kind of what are typical services that help in that area?
Yeah. So each district will have like a behavior specialist. And so they will have their own RBTs and BCBAs and things like that. And so most likely with behavioral concerns, they'll have like behavior consults. Sometimes it's tackled through, if it's like a counseling thing, or a combination of both. They, especially if they have a BIP, then they might say that like everyone is providing that behavioral intervention. But specific services wise, I would say that behavior specialists, those consults, counseling, if they do it in like resource room with the special education teacher, you can do, but I would just make sure it's documented and that it talked about exactly how that is being implemented. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
I am a little curious just how your services work. Could you tell us just a little bit more about how Bevel's Advocate works?
Yeah, for sure. So at Bevel's Advocate, we work very one-on-one with the family. And so we have you come on for a consult, which is what this QR code is. And you kind of just explain your situation. And we make a plan going forward. And so we offer IEP, 504 BIP reviews. So we'll look at all of your documents, your testing, everything that you have, basically, any of the diagnoses, the IEPs, for example, and we'll make sure that there are no discrepancies, that it's being provided to the child's needs. So making sure all those needs are being met. And we also provide like ongoing advocacy. So in some cases, it's a struggle with schools and making sure that they're keeping up on things. And so the family brings us in and we're kept in the loop on a monthly basis. So all emails, all communications with the schools, we're kept up with. And so that by the time, because sometimes by the time people get to us or other advocates, things have slipped through the cracks, or it's been 6 months, or it's been a horrible year, things like that. So with the monthly advocacy or ongoing advocacy, we really like that model because we're continually hands-on with everything, and that we're able to keep up. So we're with you all the time. We call, we text, we have coaching meetings for anything that you need to you feel you want to get educated on. And so for the documents reviews and things like that, it's $365. And then for the ongoing, it's $90 a month. But we never want finances to be a reason why someone doesn't get the help that they need. And so we also offer financial assistance to get discounted or donated services. And so we just want everyone, if you need the help, to reach out and we'll make sure we find a place for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Morgan.
Yeah. Sorry if I wasn't clear. That includes like meeting attendances. So with the documents review and on the ongoing, like any meetings you have, we're able to attend with you in the meetings. We take notes, and we're just there to answer any questions, to raise that red flag if things aren't sounding right, and help advocate for you and your family. Things we can look out for and things I don't know any better about. I would say we went over a lot of things to look out for today. And again, I'll send you some more of those like handouts for you, because I know we went over it very quickly. And so I will get that sent out, and so you can digest it more. You don't know what you don't know, and you go in trusting the schools, and sometimes it's not panning out how they said that it would, and so that can be incredibly frustrating. And so we want to be able to help with that. So even if it's just educating you on your rights, or making you aware of some of these red flags that we went over today, we want to remove that veil of unknown, because we want the best for all of your kids. So anything that we can do to help, we're there for you. I know someone else sent one in. It says, I requested one-on-one therapy sessions with my child, but was told no school in the district do one-on-ones, only group. Is that accurate? I do hear this a lot. The truth is the law requires services to be based on your child's individual needs. Obviously not what's convenient or typical for the district. So if your child requires that one-on-one to make progress, then the IEP can and should say that. So it's fine for schools to prefer groups, but it's not accurate to say they don't do one-on-ones. Services must be individualized, and districts can't use blanket policies to deny what a child needs, especially in our space with our special needs kiddos. So I would suggest what you say is kind of, again, bringing it back to that data. Show me the data that proves my child is making progress in the group setting. So if not, what evidence supports that group therapy is sufficient? That way you're not arguing about their policy. You're, again, bringing it back to that data. And if you have more questions about that, you can reach out. Any other questions? I've got one more that was sent in, so if not, we can go over that. Okay, last one. It says, should you always have another person with you at IEP meetings for support, or is that even necessary? This one totally depends on you. But like I touched on earlier, the law says you can bring anyone with knowledge of your child to the IEP meeting. So I found for many parents having another person there, whether it's an advocate or a friend, or even just someone to take notes, it makes the process less overwhelming. So do you have to? No. Many parents go alone and they do just fine. But also having that support often changes the dynamic of the meeting. It gives you space to focus on the discussion rather than note-taking or trying to process everything. So I'd say my advice is if you feel the meetings like high stakes, bring support. If you're comfortable and the team is collaborative, then you may not need it, in all honesty. But also, Devil's Advocate is here if you ever want someone by your side. But again, you're not required to bring anyone. So, well, I talked your guys' ear off, and I talked really fast and gave a lot of information all at once. So if anything comes up, feel free to contact me, and you can schedule that consultation, reach out on our website, or email us. And we'd be more than happy to help you. But I will send out that follow-up email with some of those resources we talked about. You're better equipped for your upcoming IEP meetings. But thank you so much to the Utah Autism Mama Meetups for having me today and for hosting this. Laurie, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Oh, just thank you so much. And in the email, you said this presentation is going to be recorded, so there should be a link in that as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Great presentation, and we appreciate your time and all that you do. And I know that you're working with one of our moms in our group already, which is fantastic. So we're just happy to collaborate with you anytime. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you all soon.